was about to open my mouth to warn him when the lions attacked. It all happened in an instant. I blinked and the lions lunged out of the grass like lightning, pounced on Jonas while the others positioned themselves around the vehicle. "Jonas, run!" I screamed, but it was too late. My name is Rachel Thompson. I'm 32 years old, and my husband Michael and I decided to embark on an adventure that would stay with us for the rest of our lives. We've been dreaming of going on a safari in Africa for quite some time, and finally we made it. We landed in Tanzania's Mara Valley Safari area here. We would have the chance to observe wildlife in its purest form: lions, elephants, cheetahs, and maybe even hyenas in their natural habitat. However, we could never have imagined that this journey would soon turn into a nightmare. As soon as we stepped off the plane, the hot air and intense humidity hit us like a wall. Despite the exhaustion from the long flight, we couldn't contain our excitement. We met our safari guide, Jonas, who was waiting for us at the airport. Jonas was in his 40s, tall and rugged looking, but with a friendly smile that put us at ease. He filled us in on the area as we drove toward our hotel. He mentioned that we'd be staying at Nyota Safari Lodge, a luxurious yet nature-centered camp. As we made our way to the lodge, I couldn't help but marvel at the scenery. The endless grassy plains, distant baobab trees, eagles soaring across the sky. Everything looked like a dream. But little did I know, dreams sometimes turn into nightmares. When we arrived at the lodge, we were greeted by a beautiful wooden structure, blending perfectly with the surroundings. There were no modern buildings in sight, just safari-style luxury tents and stone houses. Everything was peaceful, as if time had stopped here. Once we checked into our room, Jonas invited us to join him for dinner in the common area. Despite our exhaustion, we decided to go to the hotel restaurant. While we were sitting at our table, I noticed Jonas approaching us with a serious expression on his face. "We'll leave at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The wild doesn't joke around. No matter what happens, don't get out of the vehicle. If anything goes wrong, stay calm and listen to me. Your phones might not work here, so we'll carry the lodge's radios with us." At that moment, what Jonas said felt like standard procedure. This guy had been guiding tours in the area for years, and he knew better than anyone what was risky. But I have to admit, a strange feeling of unease began to settle in. Later that night, we retired to our room. Michael fell asleep almost instantly, but I couldn't shut my eyes. I glanced out the window, and that's when I saw something strange. Under the moonlight, I could make out the shape of a large animal, its eyes glowing. It was a lion. It stood there, staring at me, perfectly still. A wave of fear washed over me, but I tried to calm myself down. "Wild life is normal here, Rachel. Stay calm," I thought, and slowly lay back in bed, closing my eyes. I wish I had listened to that nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that night. The next morning, I woke up to the soft sunlight streaming through the tulle curtains of our tent. For a few seconds, I felt disoriented, like I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered the lion I had seen staring at me through the window last night, and a chill ran down my spine. I rushed to the window, but when I looked outside, there was nothing, just the endless savanna and grasses, gently swaying in the wind. Michael was already up. He had on his beige safari clothes and was packing his camera gear into his bag. I told him about the lion I had seen the night before, but he just laughed. "This is Africa, Rachel. Lions are everywhere. There's nothing to worry about." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just being paranoid for no reason. And we went downstairs for breakfast. Jonas and a few other tourists were already gathered. Today, a group of 4 Germans would be joining us on the safari. Jonas opened the door to the massive Land Rover and invited everyone in. Michael and I took seats in the front rows. "Remember," Jonas said before starting the engine, "this is a part of the wilderness. We are the guests here, so whatever happens, follow the rules." As our journey began, everything seemed perfect. We watched massive herds of elephants, groups of zebras, and cheetahs stretched out in the shade of trees. Michael and the other tourists were snapping photos left and right, but inside I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. About 2 hours into the trip, Jonas steered the vehicle off the main trail, driving it deeper into the bush. "This is a spot where we often see the Big Five," he said. "The Big Five: lion, elephant, leopard, buffalo. Rhino were the 5 animals tourists most wanted to see. While Michael was getting his cameras ready, the vehicle suddenly jolted. Jonas cursed under his breath. "What happened?" I asked. Jonas tried turning the steering wheel, but the vehicle wouldn't move. He then opened the door and stepped outside, bending down to check the tires. "Damn it, the front tires are flat." My eyes widened. I pulled out my phone, but there was no signal. Jonas shook his head and grabbed the radio, but even that didn't get a response. Jonas said, "Just wait here while I change the tires. But no one gets out of the vehicle, okay?" We all nodded. Jonas went to the back and grabbed his tools from the trunk. Just as he was about to change the tire, a shadow appeared from the tall grass in the distance. Michael squinted and whispered, "What's that?" The shadow shifted slightly. Then another one, and another. That's when I realized a pride of lions was watching us. A cold wave of fear rushed through me. Even Michael and the other tourists were holding their breath. But Jonas had no idea. He had already placed the jack under the tire and was leaning on the vehicle, using all his strength to lift it. I was about to open my mouth to warn him when the lions attacked. It all happened in an instant. I blinked and the lions lunged out of the grass like lightning, pounced on Jonas while the others positioned themselves around the vehicle. "Jonas, run!" I screamed, but it was too late. By the time Jonas looked up, he saw a yellow blur leap at him. The massive claws of the lion knocked him to the ground. He tried to scream, but it quickly turned into a guttural growl. The second lion appeared right next to the first and went straight for his throat. Blood spread across the ground like dark stains. The inside of the vehicle erupted into chaos. One of the German tourists screamed, while the other covered their face with their hands. Michael held his breath, frozen in terror. I was paralyzed. Just minutes ago, this man was talking to us. Now, he was dead. The lion circled Jonas's lifeless body. One grabbed his arm with its teeth and began dragging him, while the others waited to tear him apart. The vehicle was silent. We all just stared, unable to scream or run. Then Michael grabbed my wrist. He whispered, "Don't move," but I couldn't suppress the screams inside me. Jonas's body was on the ground, surrounded by 4 hungry lions, and we were helpless. For what felt like an eternity, we just watched. The lions remained alert, as if they'd noticed us inside the vehicle but weren't sure whether to attack or not. One of them locked eyes with me. Its pupils were enormous. I held my breath. At that moment, a 5th lion emerged from the grass. But this one was bigger, more muscular, an alpha. It was immediately obvious that it was the leader. It moved with slow, deliberate steps, exuding confidence. The other lions quickly backed off. One lion was still tugging at Jonas's arm, but when the alpha let out a low growl, it immediately retreated. Michael and I exchanged a glance. No one in the vehicle said a word. The alpha had noticed us. Its eyes were locked directly on us through the windshield. When it breathed, the fur around its nose trembled. Then it took a step closer. In that moment, I thought we were going to die. And just then, one of the German tourists screamed. The lion's eyes widened, and it lunged. The German tourist's scream echoed through the air, like the death sentence we'd been waiting for. The alpha lion immediately lunged toward the vehicle. Its massive paws slammed into the windshield, causing the glass to rattle and crack. We all screamed as a wave of panic surged through the vehicle. I couldn't even breathe. The lion's eyes were locked directly on me. Michael grabbed my arm tightly and whispered, "Stay calm, don't move." But the other tourists were in full panic mode. The woman next to us tried to open the door. "What are you doing?" I screamed, but it was too late. The door cracked open just a few inches, and in that split second, the alpha made its move. With one leap, it shoved its front paws through the gap. The woman tried to pull back, but it was too late. The lion sunk its teeth into her shoulder and yanked her outside, screaming. Her screams, those screams would never leave my mind. When the woman hit the ground, the other lions pounced on her. Her screams didn't last long. Soon, all that remained were snarls, flesh-tearing, and guttural growls. Michael's hand was trembling. I pressed my mouth shut, my stomach turning, but I knew we couldn't make a sound. For what felt like forever, we just waited. We waited. The alpha lion locked its eyes on us again. It placed its front paws on the ground and began circling the vehicle slowly. It was testing us. Were we still a threat, or were we the next prey? Michael very slowly moved his hand toward his waist. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He pulled out the walkie-talkie. He turned on the mic and whispered softly, "Is anyone hearing us?" Static. Then, a beep. A signal. I took a deep breath, but Michael's eyes widened in horror. The static sound from the walkie-talkie had triggered the alpha lion. In an instant, the lion lunged at the door. With the sound of cracking glass, we all screamed. The windshield rattled as the alpha lion pressed its front paws against the door, pushing with all its strength to break the glass. Inside, everyone was frozen. Michael clutched the walkie-talkie tightly, but if he made another sound, it would give us away completely. Inside the vehicle, all I could hear were the heavy breaths we were all taking. No one moved, but that silence didn't last long. One of the German tourists began to cry, saying she couldn't feel her legs. She was shaking with fear. The man next to her tried to cover her mouth with his hand, but he couldn't stop her sobs. The alpha's eyes narrowed. Slowly, it backed away from the glass. Then it grabbed the door's metal frame with its teeth and began pulling. Before I even realized it, I had my hands gripping Michael's arm. My body was trembling uncontrollably. Michael, however, never took his eyes off the lion's movements. It was as if he was looking for an escape, but there was no way out. And then, in that moment, one of us completely lost it. One of the German tourists in the back seat pulled a flare gun from his bag. Michael's eyes widened in horror. "Stay calm. Don't shoot." But the man didn't listen. He pointed the flare gun directly at the alpha lion and pulled the trigger. Boom! The flare shot out and landed right in front of the lion, creating a brilliant red burst of light. The alpha immediately jumped back and let out a wild, deafening roar. But here's the problem. It didn't just agitate the alpha, it triggered the other lions as well. Growls and roars from the grass grew louder and more numerous. And now, we had their full attention. Not just one lion, but the entire pride. Grass around the vehicle began to rustle violently. Shadows leapt from every direction. I closed my eyes, preparing for death. But just as I did, I heard the sound of an engine in the distance. The sound of the engine in the distance pierced the wild silence that had settled over the bush. The lions instantly froze. The alpha lifted its head, ears erect, its eyes still fixed on us. But something had changed now. A new threat was approaching. Michael and I locked eyes. "Someone's coming," whispered, but I wasn't relieved, nor was I fully hopeful, because no one should have been coming here. Who could it be? The sound of the vehicle grew louder. Then through the bush, a large 4x4 SUV emerged. Its headlights flashed on and shone directly at the alpha. The lion hesitated for a moment. The others began to vanish from sight, but they didn't leave just hid. The vehicle door swung open quickly. A tall, muscular man jumped down. He had a rifle in his hand. He surveyed us briefly, then spoke in a cold tone. "What the hell are you doing here?" Michael, still in shock, responded, "We were on a safari. Our tire blew out and our guide was killed. Help us." The man squinted his eyes. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just looked around. Then his gaze fell on Jonas's bloodied body. He slowly shook his head. "No one gets this close to this area. Why did your guide make such a mistake?" Michael answered, "We don't know." The man scanned the surroundings once more. The lions hadn't fully left. There were still eyes glinting from the grass. Then he turned to us. "Hurry up. We need to get out of here, now." As soon as he said that, we ran to the vehicle, shaking but knowing we were still alive. Michael helped me into the vehicle and the doors slammed shut behind us. The engine rumbled to life, and we hit the road. I didn't know who the man was, but right now I didn't care. All I knew was, for now, we were safe. But had we really escaped? As the vehicle sped forward, I turned to look behind us. The lions hadn't fully retreated. Eyes still gleamed from the grass. They were still there. The man gripped the steering wheel tightly and muttered, "Hold on tight. They won't give up easily." Michael immediately asked, "What do you mean by that?" The man shifted his eyes from the rearview mirror to the road. "This pride is different. Normally, lions aren't this aggressive, but they've learned to hunt." I swallowed. They had learned to hunt? Michael asked sharply, "So how do we get away from them?" The man didn't answer, but he sped up, and then, out of the bush, I saw the lion suddenly charge. "Watch out!" I screamed. The man swerved the wheel quickly. The vehicle tilted to one side, the tires left the ground, and everyone inside was thrown to the side. But he regained control without losing it. From the dust cloud behind us, the more lions sprang forward. One jumped directly onto the back of the vehicle. It climbed onto the trunk and started slashing wildly. Its claws sank into the metal, trying to bend the hood. Michael shouted in panic, "We need to deal with IT." The man cursed and grabbed his rifle. With one hand on the wheel, he quickly aimed the rifle at the rear window. Boom! The sound of the gunshot deafened me. The lion screamed as it fell from the trunk. But we were safe. We had really made it out. The man turned his eyes back to the road. "Let's get you to your hotel." And with that, we